Michael Corinthos was used to surprises. Growing up in Port Charles as Sonny Corinthos' son, he'd seen his fair share of family drama, secrets, and betrayal. But nothing prepared him for the bombshell that was about to hit. Michael was sitting in his office at Aurora Media, skimming through an article draft, when his phone buzzed. It was a text from Willow. "Meet me at the pier. It's important." The message was brief and vague, but Michael knew Willow didn't send such messages lightly. Curious and slightly concerned, Michael headed down to the pier, where he saw Willow waiting. She looked anxious, her usual calm demeanor replaced with visible distress. "Hey," Michael greeted her, searching her face. "What's going on?" Willow took a deep breath, her gaze flickering with apprehension. "Michael, I need you to hear me out before you react. There's something you need to know, something about your family." Michael's brow furrowed. "My family? Willow, what are you talking about?" "It's about Sonny," she said, watching his face carefully. He's been keeping something from you. Something major." Michael's mind raced. Sonny was no stranger to secrets, but over the past year, Michael had distanced himself from his father, determined to chart his own course without Sonny's influence. The thought of another hidden truth filled him with dread. "What is it?" he asked, his voice tight. Willow hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "Sonny's. He's been working with the feds." The words hit Michael like a slap. "What?" he whispered, stunned. "Working with the feds? Are you serious?" Willow nodded. "I found out recently. Sonny's been cooperating with them, feeding them information. I don't know all the details, but apparently it's been going on for months." Michael's mind spun with questions, anger, and confusion. Sonny, cooperating with the feds? It didn't make sense. Sonny had always been fiercely independent, refusing to let law enforcement dictate his actions. But if what Willow said was true, then Michael needed answers, and he needed them now. "Does anyone else know?" he asked. Willow shook her head. "Not that I know of, but Michael, you need to be careful. If Sonny finds out that you know..." Michael nodded, already making a plan in his mind. "I won't say anything yet, but I have to figure out why he'd do this. There has to be more to the story." Willow took his hand, concern filling her eyes. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Sonny's unpredictable, and I don't want you getting hurt." Michael gave her a reassuring smile, though inside, he was anything but calm. "Don't worry, Willow. I'll handle this." That evening, Michael arrived at Sonny's office. He hadn't planned to confront his father directly, but the need for answers was too strong. Sonny looked up from his desk, his expression neutral. "Michael," he greeted, though his tone was cautious. "Didn't expect to see you here." Michael kept his face composed, but his tone was sharp. "I need to talk to you. I heard something, and I need to know if it's true." Sonny's eyes narrowed, his body tensing. "Depends on what you heard." Michael took a deep breath, keeping his voice steady. "Are you working with the feds?" The question hung heavy in the air. Sonny's eyes flickered with surprise, but he quickly regained his composure. "Who told you that?" Michael folded his arms, not backing down. "Does it matter? Just answer me." Sonny exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "It's complicated, Michael. I did what I had to do, for the sake of the family. Sometimes you have to make difficult choices, and this was one of them." "But with the feds?" Michael asked, his voice rising. "You've always kept your distance from them, and now you're feeding them information. Do you know what kind of risk that puts everyone in?" Sonny looked away, a flash of guilt crossing his face. "I didn't want you to find out like this. But yes, I'm cooperating with them. I made an agreement to protect certain people, to protect our family." Michael's anger flared. "And you didn't think I deserved to know? After everything we've been through?" "I did it to keep you out of it," Sonny replied, his tone fierce. "I did it because I knew you'd try to stop me, and it would just make things harder. This is the only way to keep everyone safe. Michael shook his head, feeling betrayed. You think this is keeping us safe? Do you realize how many people could get hurt if this goes wrong? Sunny's gaze softened. I know, Michael. I know it's a risk. But I'm willing to take it if it means protecting my family. Sometimes, there's no easy choice. Michael left Sunny's office feeling more conflicted than ever. Part of him understood Sunny's reasoning, but another part of him felt betrayed. He'd spent his life trying to distance himself from Sunny's criminal world, and now he was being dragged back in, whether he wanted it or not. Returning home, he paced the living room, trying to process everything. Willow joined him, her face etched with concern. Did you talk to him? Michael nodded, his expression grim. He admitted it. He's cooperating with the feds. He thinks he's doing it to protect us, but I don't know. This whole situation, it's a mess. Willow wrapped her arms around him, offering comfort. I'm sorry, Michael. I know this must be hard for you. Michael sighed, resting his forehead against hers. I just don't know what to do. I don't want to be involved in this, but if something goes wrong, it could affect all of us. I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. Willow pulled back, meeting his gaze with a determined look. Then we face it together. Whatever happens, we'll get through it. Michael felt a surge of gratitude for Willow's support, knowing that he could rely on her through whatever challenges lay ahead. The next few days were tense, as Michael wrestled with the implications of Sunny's alliance with the feds. He couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to spiral out of control. Yet, he knew that no matter what happened, he had to be ready to protect his family. Meeting with Drew and Carly, Michael confided in them about Sunny's actions, realizing he needed allies to help him navigate the difficult road ahead. Together, they began to devise a plan, ready to intervene if Sunny's arrangement backfired. As he stood on the precipice of uncertainty, Michael felt the weight of his father's choices pressing down on him. But he knew one thing for sure. He would do whatever it took to keep his family safe, even if it meant facing the unexpected revelations and challenges that came with being a Corinthos. In Port Charles, those who are known to the community have a tendency to carry with them a variety of secrets, problems, and opportunities. The return of Holly Sutton was similarly unremarkable. She arrived with a mission that only a select few people in the town truly understood, and she did it with a dazzling grin and a quiet composure. In the past, her travels and relationships had been entwined with many people in the city. Nevertheless, now, it was her loyalty to those she loved more than anything else, together with a specific offer that she carried, that would determine the next step that she would take. In the afternoon of that day, Holly made a visit to the restaurant located in the Metro Court, where she had already scheduled a rendezvous with Robert Scorpio. During the time that she was waiting, her eyes wandered to the busy life that was going on outside the window. She reflected about the times that they had spent together in the past, the challenges that they had triumphed over, and the love that had been put through everything. Following the arrival of Robert, Holly straightened up and began to make preparations to present her proposition. When she welcomed him, her voice was friendly but laced with a note of reluctance. "Robert," she said, "it's been far too much time." The typical charm that Robert possessed was tempered by a feeling of melancholy when he smiled. "Holly, it is always the case. The reason you came back to Port Charles this time was something that I was beginning to wonder about." As she always does, Holly laughed and said, straight to the point, "I have come to find you because I am in need of your assistance with something really significant, and I believe that it is something that you will want to be engaged in." Taking a momentary pause, she took a deep breath. "A partnership is something I'm offering to you, one that has the potential to change things for both of us." In a state of heightened interest, Robert leaned forward, his eyes narrowing in concentration. "I'm paying attention." During this time, Mina Reeves, who was working at General Hospital, had been experiencing a strong desire to get back in touch with her daughter-in-law, Willow Tate. Nina was able to tell that Willow was going through something big, despite the fact that their history was full of complications. The recent chats that the young woman had carried with them an air of uncertainty that brought to Nina's mind her own troubles all too vividly. As Nina approached Willow in the corridor, she took a moment to take a deep breath. She said under her breath, "Willow," in an effort to avoid waking her up. "Could we have a conversation? Only for a brief period of time." The expression of surprise could be seen in Willow's eyes as she looked up. There was something beguiling about Nina's real tone, despite the fact that she was hesitant on her part. "Of course, Nina. How are you feeling right now?" After locating a secluded area in the hospital lounge, Nina's expression became more gentle as she started to engage in conversation. "I am aware that things have not always been simple amongst those of us. On the other hand, I've noticed that you feel a little disoriented as of late. If there is anything that you require or would want to discuss, I would be happy to assist you." As Willow examined Nina's proposition, her expression became increasingly uncertain. She desired to disregard it and pretend as if everything was on the up and up. However, the reality was that she was experiencing a growing sense of uncertainty regarding her life, the decisions she was making, and her future with Michael. Willow finally broke the stillness after a brief pause, her voice hardly rising above a whisper while she spoke. "All I did was, I have no idea where I am supposed to be anymore. Everything appears to be so fragile, and I am terrified of making decisions that are not just detrimental to myself, but also to Wiley." Nina extended her hand and took Willow's hand in a gentle manner. "I am aware of that. Believe me, I've committed more than my fair share of errors throughout my life. It's possible that what you require at this moment, Willow, is to have more faith in yourself. Pay attention to what seems correct, rather than what feels safe." Willow gave her words some thought, and within Nina's counsel, she discovered an unexpected source of solace. Holly presented Robert with the particulars of her proposition when they were both present in the Metro Court. It was recently discovered that a major character involved in international crime had lately surfaced in Port Charles, and she had obtained information about this individual. The opportunity to expose them may not only make a difference in the city, but it could also bring some equilibrium back to Robert's moral compass, which was a purpose he had been looking for ever since he had stepped back from his former position. "I am aware that it makes me feel uneasy, but this is an opportunity to make a significant difference, to engage in significant activities once more, and I am not capable of doing it by myself." Robert hesitatingly considered the possibility, as his gut feelings urged him to do so. However, the glimmer of excitement that he saw in Holly's eyes brought to him the previous missions that they had worked together on. Everything appealed to him, the excitement, the difficulty, and the feeling of having made a difference in the world. "It's fine," he said, maintaining a steady tone of voice. "Let's go ahead and do this, but there is one stipulation. We promise to keep this a secret. It is not required for anyone else to get involved unless it is absolutely necessary." Holly gave a satisfied nod, her face revealing a sense of relaxation. Together, they started formulating a strategy, well aware that they were about to go on a journey that had the potential to transform not just their lives, but also the lives of people who were in their immediate vicinity. Upon Willow's departure from her chat with Nina, she experienced a peculiar sense of serenity that began to settle over her. The words of Nina reverberated in her head, encouraging her to go with her gut impulses, rather than clinging to what would make her feel more at ease. She realized that she was having second thoughts about her destiny with Michael, questioning whether or not their relationship was truly what she desired, or whether or not she was merely remaining in it because it seemed like the most convenient option. Willow found herself on the docks later that day, preoccupied with her own thoughts as she gazed out over the sea toward the horizon. She was joined by Sasha, who looked at her companion and noted that she had a thoughtful expression on her face. "Willow, are you feeling okay?" Concern emanated from Sasha's voice as she posed the question. Willow exhaled, grateful for the assistance. "Not sure, Sasha. I'm not sure. I have this recurring sensation that I should be doing something else with my life, but I have no idea what that is supposed to be. I am frightened by it all." Sasha gave a sympathetic nod, demonstrating that she was well aware of the challenges that go along with determining one's trajectory. There are times when the finest thing you can do is to give yourself permission to discover what feels suitable. Just take it easy. Despite the fact that it might not be the way you anticipated, you will find your way. Willow experienced a revitalized feeling of clarity, and she made the decision to take Sasha's recommendation to heart. It was necessary for her to discover her own way, one that more accurately expressed both who she was and who she aspired to be. Holly and Robert put their strategic plan into action over the course of the subsequent few days. Through the gathering of intelligence, the staking out of the target's whereabouts, and the development of a strategy, they were able to intercept and expose his illegal acts without putting any innocent lives in danger. They gathered at a discreet spot on the evening of the sting, with adrenaline rushing through their veins during the encounter. Holly smiled with self-assurance, experiencing a sense of vitality that she hadn't experienced in many years. Even though he was skeptical, Robert trusted her instincts just as much as he trusted his own. They were absolutely oblivious of the trap that had been put out for them when their target arrived just as they were getting closer to the meeting spot. Holly and Robert slipped in with stealth and precision, quickly acquiring the evidence they needed to hand over to the authorities after they had completed their investigation. However, just as they were about to leave, they heard footsteps approaching from around the corner. The moment Holly turned around, she saw a familiar figure, a local informant who had connections to the target. Her heart began to accelerate. With a smirk flickering over his lips, the informant acknowledged their presence. While he was obstructing their route, he inquired, "Are you going somewhere?" Having a rapid thought, Holly took action. In a cool and collected manner, she responded, "Actually, yes," while giving out a false envelope that she had prepared just in case. "It is important that you take this to your employer and let him know that his time in Port Charles is coming to an end." As soon as the informant took a glance at the envelope, it was obvious that they were taken aback. They then ran away, which helped Holly and Robert to make their escape. During the time that they were taking a breather outside, Robert turned to Holly, his admiration for her being obvious. "I needed to have known that you would be one step expressing her triumphant feelings. I am familiar to you, Robert. In any situation, I have a backup plan." In the days that followed her chat with Mina and Sasha, Willow made time for introspection into her own thoughts and feelings. She came to the realization that on some level, she had been clinging to her connection with Michael out of the fear that she might come to lose her stability. On the other hand, she had come to the realization that her own contentment and future development were of equal importance to any other commitment. She sat down with Michael one evening, and during their conversation, she expressed her concerns and stated that she needed to take some time for herself. Michael, despite the fact that he was heartbroken, eventually came to the realization that they both needed to develop independently before making a decision on their future together at some point. Starts from scratch. The fact that Holly and Robert were successful in their mission decreased the number of dangers that were hovering over Port Charles. Due to the fact that she had once again made a difference, Holly experienced a revitalized sense of purpose. Willow, on the other hand, discovered a renewed sense of calm and resilience as a result of her decision to prioritize her own path. Holly and Willow had both been confronted with obstacles that pushed them toward growth, and both of them had discovered strength and clarity in the choices that they made. Having demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful actions came from within, from listening to one's own heart, they had done so in a city where change was constant and connections were always shifting. Moreover, while the never-ending cycle of drama and intrigue that was Port Charles proceeded, they were both aware that they were prepared for whatever was around the corner. Port Charles had a way of luring people back, regardless of how far they had traveled away from the city. Indeed, Lucky Spencer was hardly an exception. As soon as he stepped off the train, he took a deep breath and felt the weight of his decision to come back. Life on the road had left him feeling more alienated than he had ever felt before, despite the fact that he had spent years away doing his search for serenity. His return was not an easy process, but he was aware that he needed to confront his history, and he was aware of the ideal individual to give him a head start. When Laura was in her kitchen, she heard a knock that was not very loud. As soon as she opened the door, her eyes lit up with a look of surprise. She was greeted by her son, who was standing on the doorstep. She inhaled deeply and asked, "Lucky?" as she pulled him into an embrace. As he carried the stiffness in his shoulders, she could feel the strain that he was carrying. When she turned her head to gaze at him, she remarked, "It's been such a long time. What is it that causes you to return to Port Charles?" At the same time that his eyes were filled with recollections, Lucky gave a half smile. "Mom, I needed to come home immediately." Upon entering her living room, he followed her into the familiar warmth of the space. Laura had the impression that there was something more under his placid facade, something that he needed to reveal. Sitting next to him, she waited for him to come up with the appropriate words. The eyes of Lucky were far away as he sat peacefully. It had been such a huge amount of time since he had given himself permission to contemplate everything that he had abandoned. When he saw his mother again and felt the warmth of her embrace, it rekindled emotions that he had thought he had buried. He started off by saying, "Mom, it's difficult to explain," with a low voice. "At one point, I believed that I could leave everything behind, including the mistakes of the past and the heartbreak. On the other hand, it seemed to follow me wherever I went, regardless of where I went. I experienced a sense of emptiness." The compassion that was in Laura's eyes was evident as she took his hand. There are moments when we believe that space will bring about tranquility. Luck, but you are not the only one. I'm present. Lucky gave a slight nod, experiencing a wave of comfort. "Thanks a lot, Mom. I was completely unaware of how much I missed being able to chat to you again. It's possible that I've been running for such a long time that I've forgotten what it was like to have a place to call home." Upon hearing his comments, Laura's heart experienced a slight break. Having witnessed his struggles, she had also witnessed him making decisions that frequently left her feeling anxious and helpless. Nevertheless, she was pleased with him for returning and confronting what he needed to confront. "Lucky, what exactly has you been trying to escape from?" she inquired in a soft voice. The fragility that was there in his eyes became more apparent as he paused. "At this point, I am at a loss for words. There's just a lot about it." For a moment, Lucky inhaled deeply. "Everything that we went through together, even Elizabeth, keeps running through my mind. It seemed as though something was continually dragging us apart, despite the fact that we put in a lot of effort to make it work." While Laura listened attentively, she had witnessed the anguish that resulted from the complicated connection that he had with Elizabeth, and she was aware of how profoundly he had loved Elizabeth. The next thing that Lucky said was, "I thought that leaving her would help me move on. However, it's almost as if I've left a piece of myself with her. Every time I think about it, I find myself wondering if there was something else I could have done, if maybe we might have found a way to make it work." The pain in Laura's heart was for him. "You had a profound love for her, Lucky. The kind of love that you described does not simply vanish. Nevertheless, there are situations when individuals develop in various ways. You are not a failure because of this." The weight of regret was evident in Lucky's eyes as he gazed down. "In an effort to be strong for our family and to be there for her, I made an effort. On the other hand, I never stopped feeling like I wasn't good enough. As if I were to continue to commit the same errors over and over again." Laura offered him a reassuring hand by placing it on his shoulder. The concept of love is a complicated one, and it is not always simple to understand what went wrong. In spite of this, you were both young and bearing your own weight at the time. You shouldn't be too critical of yourself. Her comments brought a sense of relief to him, and he bowed his head. "Perhaps it's time for me to let go of that guilt," she said. "Still, it's not easy, Mom. It's almost as if I'm still clinging to the thought that we might be able to make everything better." It was a lovely smile that Laura gave him. "A good place to begin is by forgiving yourself, Lucky. To add insult to injury, you could chat to her if you feel ready to do so. In many circumstances, the act of parting ways might be the initial step toward recovery. The topic of conversation eventually shifted to another burden that Lucky was carrying in his heart: his father, Luke. Lucky was still carrying a tremendous load, which included the memories, the heritage, and the expectations that were placed upon him. It's Dad. Despite the fact that his voice was heavy with emotion, Lucky said, "I don't even know how to begin with him. Everything that he stood for and the decisions that he made, they overwhelm everything that I am attempting to accomplish. There is a part of me that still looks up to Dad, even though I want to be my own person." The complexities of his connection with Luke was not lost on Laura, who nodded her head in agreement. Lucky, Luke was a man who faced many challenges. Despite the fact that he was not perfect, he possessed a strength that enabled him to endure a great deal. It is not necessary for you to live in his shadow. You have the ability to decide which aspects of him you would like to continue forward. In light of what she had said, Lucky remained silent. "It's really that difficult, Mom. There is a part of me that wishes I could have his bravery and be like him. But I don't want to repeat the errors that I've already made." Laura gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "No, you won't. Lucky, you have a kind and generous heart. You have grown as a result of his errors, and that is the most important thing. You are able to take the most positive aspects of him and still remain your own unique person." He stared at her, a smirk appearing on his face despite the sadness that he was feeling. Maybe I'm able to." Lucky was urged by Laura to investigate what he desired for his future now that he was back in the country, as they began their conversation. Her voice was quiet as she spoke. "Lucky, you came home for a reason. The question is, perhaps it is time to figure out what that is." After giving it some thought, Lucky's eyes lit up with a fresh flicker of purpose. "That is something that has been on my mind. For such a long time, I have been jogging in an attempt to get away from everything. But perhaps it is time for me to begin constructing something brand new. Something that belongs to me." Laura's eyes glowed with a sense of pride. "Lucky, you have an incredible amount of strength. I want you to know that I will stand by you no matter what choice you choose. You have endured a great deal, and as a result, you have developed over time." Lucky experienced a revitalized sense of purpose, as well as a warmth that spread throughout his body. "Thanks a lot, Mom, regarding everything. I don't believe that I would be at this place if it weren't for you." During the days that followed, Lucky made a number of incremental, but significant progress toward his recovery. However, he did not reach out to Elizabeth with the intention of rekindling their relationship. Rather, he did so in order to achieve closure. Their chat was open and unfiltered, which provided him with the opportunity to finally let go of the guilt that he had been carrying around for such a long time. Also, he made an effort to pay tribute to his father's memories in his own unique style. He made the decision to recall the resiliency and courage that he had received from Luke, rather than dwelling on the shortcomings that Luke possessed. It dawned on him that he could inherit his father's strength without succumbing to the same errors that he had made. The more time he spent with Laura, the more he came to see himself through her eyes. He began to view himself not as a guy who was defined by his past, but rather as someone who was capable of growth, forgiveness, and a future that was full of possibilities. Taking steps forward. On the very last night that Lucky spent in Port Charles, he had one last chat with Laura. This conversation contained all of the hope that he had discovered throughout his stay at home. Lucky said, "I don't know what the future holds," as he looked out over the town that he was so familiar with and that had influenced him in so many different ways. "However, for the first time in a very long time, I feel that I am prepared to deal with it." When Laura smiled, her pride was clear to see. "Lucky, no matter which way you decide to go, always keep in mind that you are not alone. You are more powerful than you give yourself credit for, and I have faith in you." With one last embrace, Lucky embarked on his journey, prepared to construct a life that was a reflection of his authentic self. In addition, When Laura watched him leave, she experienced a profound sense of serenity. She was aware that her son was finally making progress toward recovery, moving forward one step at a time. The Quartermain home in Port Charles had knife-thick tension. Valentine's return and family strife put ELQ under pressure. But Ned Quartermain, ever the smart businessman, saw an opportunity to take over the family legacy and show himself. Ned spent weeks researching Valentine's maneuvers and ELQ's financial reports. He realized he needed a strategy to win. Valentine charmed people, making it hard for Ned to earn family support. But the stakes were huge, and Ned had some tricks. He asked Michael and Drew to a secret meeting at Quartermain headquarters one morning. It was strategic since both men had ELQ interests and enough power to tip the scales. "Thank you both for coming," Ned said, calm yet urgent. "We all have different opinions on ELQ and its best interests. Valentine may destroy everything the Quartermain family has built." Michael raises eyebrow. "Are you planning to expel Valentine?" Ned smiled knowingly. "I wouldn't have called you here otherwise. A united front is needed. Valentine excels at exploiting our disputes. Standing together will prevent him from gaining ground. It will require our commitment." Drew leaned forward, curious. "What exactly are you thinking?" Ned explained his plan: to employ an obscure but binding article in the ELQ bylaws that required majority family consensus on all exterior collaborations, which Valentine had overlooked. They could compel a vote and prevent Valentine from making substantial steps without Quartermain's consent. Though dangerous, it was Ned's best lead. Gathering troops. Over the next 3 days, Ned tried to win over the Quartermains. He first addressed Olivia, describing how his proposal could save ELQ. Olivia was hesitant because she didn't like family strife, but she supported him to preserve their legacy. His next target was Brooke Lynn. Despite their difficult relationship, she was a true Quartermain. Ned felt that winning her over would send a message to the family. He discovered her singing and playing the piano in the living room. "Brooke Lynn, can we chat?" he inquired softly than usual. She looked up cautious. "What's it about?" "Valentine's attempt to take over ELQ could ruin our family's legacy. I need your help to stop him," Ned said. Brooke Lynn paused. She was tired of family and business fights, but she respected Ned's resolve. "Fine," she answered reluctantly. "But if this goes wrong, I'm not responsible." Confronting Valentine. Ned held the stockholders' meeting with his allies, laying the stage for his greatest act or downfall. As the family gathered, tensions rose. Valentine smirked confidently at the head of the table, but Ned opposite from him persisted. Ned said, "Thank you all for coming," looking around at his family. "This motion would implement an ELQ bylaw that has been dormant for years and needs family consensus on significant partnership decisions." Valentine's grin dimmed. "Ned, I'm wondering, why unearth something unused for decades?" Ned stated, "Because it's time for this family to stand together. Valentine, you may be a powerful businessman, but not Quartermain. Our family built ELQ and will decide its future." Valentine narrowed his eyes and tensed as he comprehended Ned's plan. "Ned, you're playing dangerously." Ned looked at Valentine without flinching. "I know my actions." Ned then passionately argued to the family that by implementing this bylaw, they might reclaim control over ELQ. He reminded them of Edward and Leela's legacy, which he wanted to preserve. Victory for Ned. After much debate, the family voted. They voted one by one, and Ned felt proud with each yes. Valentin's grip over ELQ lessened after the final vote and bylaw enforcement. Valentin smiled at Ned to hide his frustration. "Ned, well played. Perhaps I underestimated you." Ned smiled back, calmly celebrating his win. "Thanks, Valentin. Just remember, this family sticks together." The new bylaw put ELQ's destiny back in the Quartermain family's hands. The victory was a signal to the family that ELQ was and always would be a Quartermain legacy, not simply Ned's. The end. Epilogue. Within days of the meeting, Ned felt fresh purpose. He had shown to himself and his family that he could preserve their legacy. As he reviewed the newest reports in his office, he felt tranquil for the first time in months. Olivia entered with a beaming smile. "You did it, Ned. You safeguarded ELQ." Ned raised his determined eyes. "This was just beginning. I will protect our family."